Train today? We're going to talk about that a little bit later. I want to go ahead and get your mind frame kind of where I want it. Do you know that? Do you mind if I hypnotize you? Let me just try this. I just learned this. I haven't even told Tegan about it. I want just play along with me. Do not answer the question if you know the answer, okay? Because everybody just don't get hypnotized very well. But I want you to keep track of me. Listen to me carefully. A man left home trotting. He turned left, he trotted. He turned left, he trotted. He turned left, he trotted. And as he come back home, there was two masked men. Who were they? Come on, people. You see, the power of suggestion of what you say first will set the tone of what you hear second. When I said home, you automatically thought home. But if there was a picture of a baseball diamond right here, you would know that when he came back, it was the catcher and the umpire. But see how we can manipulate people by what we say, what they think they hear. I'm just going to say pray for me and Kathy and Debbie, because we're trying to work on communication, and the more you work on it, the worse we get. She speaks women tongue, and I hear men language. It is not work. But anyhow, it's going to be better when we get through it. But that's a good example. You know, we don't always hear what we think we hear. We can say the same words. But I want to set the stage with that. I've told this story before, but it may have a little different meaning today with the direction I want to go. As years ago, we were over babysitting my grandchildren, and I don't remember the exact, men, we don't remember anything. But I'm going to say Kathy asked Abe to do something just because Kathy is a polite person. I would have told him to do it. I'm not that polite. But anyhow, long story short, little boy says no. And I don't remember what she said, but he replied back, "You're not my mama." Now, how would that affect you? I want to know. I want you to go just like the guy running, trotting, turn left, turn left, turn left. How does that affect you when a child tells you no? I want you to feel that feeling when a child tells you no. I want you to think it and feel it for a moment. We can hear it and not feel it. But most of us, when we think of a child telling us no, depending on how old you are, the first thought might be a backhand. So let me rephrase this a little bit. How would it be if you told your parents no? What is the feeling then? Pain? Do you get my drift where I'm going with this? It's how does no make you feel? Whichever end you're on. If you're on the parent end, how does being told make you feel? Because they whopped you, you're better at being no, maybe. But the whole deal that I want to do today is we're going to talk about horses telling us no. And I love working with Tegan, because Tegan brings up the great point. She puts the women fluff on it. What they're saying is they don't understand. It's not that they're just that defiant. Now wait a minute, are we talking about, is this a mare or gelding? It's a gelding up here kicking. Oh, I bet he's divorced. You just have a mean thing about you, so many times. But anyhow, Tegan's going to talk quite a bit about the thoroughbred side of it, because that's one of the places that she was really good at. But here's what I want to bring you back to over and over and over today. How many times are you willing to tell God no? Have you ever said, I know I shouldn't, but you just told God no? James 4:17 says to know what to do and not do it is telling God no. He says it's sin. That's telling God no. Any sin is after we told God no. So we're going to talk about this with the horse. We're going to come back. I got some really great stories today for you about great people in the Bible that told God no. Because it's, I know that you've done it, just some at more levels than others. And we want to kind of mull through it and figure out how we get past telling God no. Because you're here. That means you would really like to tell God yes. So we're going to talk about how do we change our no's into yeses. Tegan, what do you think? Let me get where I can watch too.
This is Richard. He's a thoroughbred. That's all I know. From what I'm witnessing with him, thoroughbreds tend to be what we call high self-preservation, meaning they want to stay alive a little more than some of the other horses seem to care about. And it's a lot easier to stay safe in your herd, where strength in numbers. He has been separated from his herd, isolated, not given any direction, and he's very worried about that. So all the antics that you're seeing coming from him right now, it's just him trying to process the fact that he's out in a big, scary world by himself where he has no protection. And it's going to be our job to help him understand that he doesn't need to be concerned about that. On top of, he also needs some manners because he is quite pushy.
I wonder if he would kick you.
He's got back feet. Any horse with back feet can kick you.
That was the answer I wanted.
I mean,
if they have feet, they can kick.
If they've got teeth, they can bite. If they've got feet, they can kick.
So, we were all set up today. I totally had everything planned for me to ride the whole time. I was going to be on the horse when church started, and I was going to ride. It's the white horse that I've been using. Well, I guess I did too good a job because they sold him. So we can't use him now. So they brought us another horse that, they said he was terrible. And Tegan and I
apologize for interjecting. I don't want to use the word terrible. They said she was crazy.
Oh, okay. So we watched him lead this thoroughbred over, and it's like, there ain't nothing crazy about that horse. I mean, it had its head level like a quarter horse, just thin. And here's what happens when we see these thin horses around here. They buy them that way, and then they try to put some weight on them. Now, some of you are going to say, well, I've seen skinny horses out there. Look around. There's some skinny old people here, too. Because skinny comes with old. What's your excuse? So anyhow, we got to be careful how we judge things. But anyhow, they led this horse, brand new, come over, and we told the girl leading it up, says, that horse is not crazy. Well, it is when you ride it. And I mean, Tegan and I both immediately went, I bet he hurts. I run my hand down his back, and he dropped that far. If you ever have, your horse seems better on the ground than riding, just take your finger and your thumb and just run it down each side of their backbone. And if they're sore, they'll squat trying to get away from the pressure. I'm surprised he hasn't really hurt somebody.
Yeah.
Because he was really hurting. I mean, that's something that we always need to be checking when things change. When I was I'm going to help with the questions. Why do horses tell us no? I think it'd be lack of training, which she would say lack of understanding. Still lack of training. Pain or disrespect. I have a lot of tolerance when I started babies that had no human problems. I'm good with them. I can do it over and over. I can green light, yellow light. I can take it easy with them. But you get me an older horse now that is trained and that knows better. This one is neither of those.
No.
I don't tolerate that. You know, it's kind of like me and Debbie and Kathy. We call each other out when we're getting out of line. You know, right then. You know, and that's the way we can do these seasoned horses. And isn't that what Christians are called to do to other Christians when they see them acting out? You know, we live in a society now. We got to come over here by the lights or I'm going to get in trouble. We live in a society now that don't offend anybody. We live in a society that says, you have to love me. Love never helps you go the wrong way. That's not love. That's not love. God loves us, but He's not going to help us go the wrong way. In fact, if we tell Him no, we're going to read stories today about there were some pretty severe consequences for telling God no. Now, as I say most Sundays, the biggest difference between illustration between horses and people and us and God is the speed of correctness. You might call it discipline, you might call it release of pressure, whatever you want to call it. But see, God does not punish us immediately. Like, if you want to teach a child, let them touch a hot stove. They learn by natural consequences. But if the stove don't burn them, what's going to happen? You keep touching them. You keep touching it. Well, with that being said, God's not going to bam you every time you do it wrong. He's not going to backhand you every time you tell Him no. Because then we would obey out of fear. You know, it's kind of like one of the stories that I've got today is about, you know, some handlers make a horse do something. What does that mean? Well, you just overpower them. Pretty plain and simple. You know, you don't try to engage their mind and let them think. So, through the thoroughbred world, we're starting to calm down a little bit. Tell us how thoroughbreds and quarter horses are different. Men and women. There you go. They're just that different.
Yeah, where do I start? I would say thoroughbreds are less forgiving with what I call silly human mistakes. They expect you to have a higher level of horsemanship and a higher level of awareness of their little cues that something is working or not working, which is why a lot of people have a hard time with thoroughbreds, because they'll miss the little cues and then the cue gets really big and then the horse is called stupid or crazy. When in fact it was really the human that wasn't listening. Quarter horses kind of have more of a go with the flow attitude, and they're just like, oh, well, you did that wrong, but whatever, it's easier to do what I'm doing, which tends to be what the human wanted anyways. and that's a stereotype. That doesn't fall true for every single one of them across the board.
One of the things that I've discovered is most people who own animals don't want to be trainers. They just want them to behave. And I've had people tell me, and this was years ago, about their dog. Make him behave, make him behave, make him, you know, you can control this situation. Well, I don't want to train every minute of the day. Well, if you do it in the beginning and get it right, you don't have to. But if you never get it right, you either get disobedience or you train all the time. And wouldn't you say inconsistency in your training is the biggest problem?
Absolutely. I can use my mom's pony. She's not here, so I can use it. He is a solid citizen little quarter horse that just deals with whatever kind of goes along the lines. But there's stuff that she will allow him to get away with today, and then tomorrow she gets mad at him for, and then she wonders why he won't listen to her. Where I set my expectations and my boundaries with him right off the bat, and I can be out there, she'll tell him to do it, and he doesn't listen, and I'm like 20 feet away from him, and I holler at him, and he's like, oh, sorry. And it's because every time I reinforce my expectation, it's hit and miss with her.
I got a perfect example of this. Every student in school knows which classrooms, which teachers you can chew gum in, and which ones you can't because of consistency. But I like to say, animals, children, and men have trouble understanding sometimes and maybe. We're just like, yeah, always or never. Don't give me this, well, maybe. I don't know what maybe is. Maybe makes me want to push the line. And I think that's what happens with animals. They push the line because they don't know what it is. So it's that having that boundary. Now, with that being said, how many of you feel like you've got really good, healthy boundaries? Two people. We got to get more chairs because we're starting a class Wednesday night on healthy boundaries. You know what? Here's what I found out, and this is so sad. Kathy and I have been doing this for a long time, and she will agree with this. The people who need it the most won't come. That's why they need it the most. Same thing with any of it. The people who need God the most are not around God. The people who need a particular class, they're the ones who don't come to the class. Debbie does a financial peace class. The people who need it the most don't come. That's just standard. That's just how it is. That's how people are. We're busy. So with that being said, Wednesday night in the building from 7 to 8, I'm starting a new healthy boundary class. Debbie's going to be helping me with it. And you can see her. Also, Kathy, while Tegan and I work with the horse a second, can you do the next Saturday information? I'm going to let you.
Well, I could if I hadn't lost that piece of paper. Hold on. Caught me off guard. Okay. So we're doing a leadership influence day. We're going to talk about things, how leadership and how it applies to Cowboy-up Ministry and the things that we can do here to spread the good news and the power to live it. And so we're going to have that class on September 13th, right here. It's a Saturday. We're going to have it over there in the classroom. We're going to start sharp at 9 a.m. We're going to conclude around 2 o'clock. Lunch will be provided. So you are welcome to that, but we need to know by this Wednesday if you're going to come, because it's going to be this Saturday the 13th, and we need to plan food. So please see Miss Debbie back here. She's got her pretty pink fuchsia shirt on today, and if you'll see her and give her your name and contact information before Wednesday so she can get the right amount of food planned, because it will be good. There'll be a lot of stuff there, and we don't want to over provide and we don't want to under provide, so please let us know that. But anyway, it's free to you. Just come and let us know you're interested. We're going to be talking about people and how we can minister to people. So hope to see you on Saturday.
All right, Tegan, I just got a little bit of information.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's hear it. You want the long story or short story? Oh, let's do the long.
The facts, the details.
Hey.
She's green. She wants the details.
I kind of get upset because I like a good steak. And I get so aggravated because if you don't know about beef, depending on what you're eating, ribeyes, T-bones, whatever. I'll use T-bones as a good example because they were on sale at Winn-Dixie last week. When they start off on this end of the cow, it's just a bone with a New York strip on the side of it. There ain't nothing on the other side. But if you move up the cow, on the other end, they call it a porterhouse. And that means on one side of the bone is a New York strip, and on the other side of the bone is a fillet. You know, not my favorite cut of meat, but my son-in-law loves them. But when they package them, they'll put a real good one with a real bad one. That's how they market it. That's why I paid my butcher $20 on the side. I said, "Can you cut me some?" Because I don't want the sorry ones. Well, same thing happens in so many areas, especially in the horse training and horse trading world. They go through a lot of horses out here because they're old and they die and they get crippled and you can't use them and you have to keep replacing them. Well, Larry and Stephanie have gone into the breeding deal, and can I tell them? That they wanted a mare out of the Secretariat bloodline. Well, the only way they could buy that mare was to take this one in on the deal, because it's the good steak, the bad steak. But what he told me, he says, this horse been on the track and won $60,000. He's not crazy, but a lot of track horses they're just like riding this fence. They have no bend, no flex, no nothing. They're stiff as a board because all they do is you pull on them and they run to the left. Every time to the left. So that helps understand, not going to have a lot of these other things. And I never know or understand about the dadgum buddy sour, barn sour stuff. That is just, I honestly, that's a problem as cowboys we never had. You just never, well, you might have it one day. But before that day is over, before the next 30 minutes. Now, I will tell you, because of a buddy soured young colt I was riding, he flipped over backwards from me and broke some ribs because he wanted to go with them other people. And we couldn't. We were guarding a hole in the fence. Our job is to stay here. But buddy soured horses, barn sour horses, they're a different problem, and we don't know how much of that we're dealing with. You know, the daggum racehorse world, they don't want to break their spirit. They want them to run. Years ago when I was training horses, I had somebody come up and they brought me this horse as high as a kite. You'd swear he was on drugs. And when they came back, he was just as kind and mellow as he could. Oh, you ruined my horse. You broke his spirit. Let me tell you the difference. You can take a trained Navy SEAL. You can take pliers and pull his fingernails out and he'll never flinch. Have you broke his spirit? No, you've taught him to control his emotions and his actions. To me, there's a difference. Now, in the race world, you do what I've never done that. You do it however you want. But I'm just saying, some of this stuff. Is it okay if I talk about women? Women want a horse that's beautiful, exciting. You turn him loose in the pasture and he jumps over things and his mane flows, but they don't like to ride that. And so many times that's what it is. This is what we see, but it ain't what we want to ride.
They dream of riding that.
Ah, okay.
Don't take away our dreams.
While we're on the point.
Be careful. You still got to go home with me.
I got to tell you, there was a couple back in the back. I walked up and said, Kathy mad at you? And I'm like, how'd you know? Honestly. Hasn't been a good week. He says, your face. I said, oh no, that ain't Kathy. That's fine. That's I am living proof that she cannot whip me. Tegan, okay. I like it already.
So some of you guys saw me wave the flag at him real quick. What he's kind of shown me already, and it goes hand in hand with earning that much on the track, is he's going to be a bit of a warrior. You're not going to make this horse do anything. You are going to have to convince him that your suggestion is worthy of his following. What does God do? He is worthy of our following through what he does and how he cares about us. But so in that, I'm going to use the flag for a little bit of surprise. I'm not trying to scare him. If I were trying to scare him, I'd sit there and wave it in his face all day long. I'm just using a little bit of a shock value. When his thought is something I don't want, I'm going to shock him out of that thought. So his thought keeps being, I want to be close to you. He is too big, and he's too pushy to allow him to continue with that thought. If he were sensitive and moved off everything I asked him to do, I'd let him be in my pocket. but he's not. So I'm going to stop the thought before he gets close enough to hurt me. And just doing that alone has gotten him a little bit better at standing still.
I mean, I was telling Kathy, I found some trainer on YouTube that I started following. He videos every 2 days a week. I don't remember what they are now, Mondays and Thursdays or something. And I was kind of liking what he was doing. And I'm always trying to learn more. And it's like, every one I watched, he says, well, he's not focused on me, but we'll get to that later. I'm like, not me. What she's doing is keeping him focused on her. Because how much do you learn for someone you're not focused on? How much do you learn from someone you don't respect? And those little tiny cues for a horse like this is big. They tell you how much pressure it takes. You know, that's why these couch potato horses make a trainer look bad, because it takes a lot of energy to make them pay attention to you. So this is ideal for this type of horse.
Well, and he's one I think that could make a trainer look bad too, because just the little bit that I've played with him, he doesn't give to pressure very well, which means for me to use a stick on him, I'm probably going to have to whack him pretty hard, which is why I chose the flag.
Isn't that the racehorse thing?
It depends on the horse.
I mean, they want them so stiff. There ain't no move right, move to me, move away from me, the ones that I noticed.
And I say the sensitivity of them, like there's some out there, my personal horse, he's so sensitive that I can push my finger like that on his nose and he's like, oh, back up, yes ma'am. He came to me like that. He's a very sensitive personality. His personality is going to be a bit more like, try to make me, see if you can. And so you're not going to be able to use physical force on this horse to get things done. You're going to have to get in his brain a lot more.
If you can see, we're actually working on getting TVs so the ones in the back can see his feet. He's got a leg cocked, he's washing out his mouth, his head's low, and his ears are up. Those are all really good signs.
Yeah.
Really good signs, you know, but it took a little bit of direction to get him off of what he was on.
And he's still focused over there, and Skipper and I differ a little bit here. I don't mind so much that he's focused over there, so long as I feel that I can get him back. And he has not gotten so far over there that I don't think I could get him back with the flag. If he were to angle any more that direction, he's going to get a flag whipped out this direction.
How's the easiest way for people to handle a horse like this that might kick? I mean, we've seen him kick the fence, kick the cones over. He kicked all kind of stuff before we started. How is the best way for people to stay safe?
Well, I mean, if their head is pointed to you, their butt's not.
And what she's saying is a short lead rope.
Yeah.
You can't be out on 10 or 15 foot of lead rope and not be able to get their nose to you.
Yeah. If I thought, and I'm not going to say he won't, I'm not going to say he will. He was kicking when he was alone. I haven't seen him kick on halter. But if I'm concerned about him kicking, I'm going to take my lead rope up like this, and I'm going to maybe come here first. Maybe, okay, he gave to that pretty well, so that tells me I can probably get his head. And then as I explore him a little bit more, I would just watch his signals. You know, as I get farther back, does an ear cock back in a, I'm concerned about you being back there way? Does his head come up a little more? Does he shift his hip towards me, saying, I don't like that, I'm threatening you? I'm going to watch all those things. Those are all yellow to red lights.
Explain the yellow.
Yellow light is exactly your traffic signals. Like, you need to slow down. Like, you need to slow down now. You're going too fast, and the horse is warning you that you're about to hit a red light, and a red light with horses is you're going to get hurt.
Red light means you've got a battle on your hands.
Yeah.
You're in for the fight. How many of you know, how much do you learn when you're mad?
Nothing.
And when a horse gets mad, when you get mad, the horse was already mad. I promise you.
Mad, or to a point that they're so scared that they're in survival mode, meaning they will do anything it takes to survive. Mad, anger, or survival is going to get you hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to play?
I don't know if I want to play or not. My shoulders feel good. You play. How's your back feel? We have to decide which one hurts the most this one each day who's training.
I'm pretty good at the moment.
I would just be curious of, and try it with your hand, flexing him. And what Tegan and I'm real big, I learned this a long time ago. We talked about some people have a tendency to make a horse do something. And what that means, you just overpower them, use more strength than they do. But when they're flexing them and they're pulling on that lead rope, you know, a horse, if you try to overpower a horse, and for this one, him being a thoroughbred, it don't take much to make him defensive. So once they get defensive, it's hard to work through that. So what I found out over years is if I would do it with my hands, they don't automatically get defensive. I pull on that lead rope, they're ready to bow up. I mean, that's kind of like, that won't be a good illustration. If you got a little bit of road rage and somebody jumps out and they're cussing you, you're defensive already. So the same thing goes. We don't want these horses to be defensive.
What did you do?
I'm just trying to.
I think it's you. So in doing this, you guys will see that, yes, I've gotten his head turned, but it's super slow. So he already goes in defensive mode with any pressure that I put on his nose. So I'm kind of putting a little bit right here and saying, can you follow? And he's saying, no, I need to look at my friends, and that noise is scaring me. Now he's got his head turned because he's trying to find the noise. Here he's pulling on me. He's pulling a lot harder now. And I'm not increasing pressure. I'm just holding my hand in a certain spot, and when he releases that spot, the pressure goes away. Here it might be a little easier just because he's going to be able to face his friends. So there, yes, I got it done, but I would say it was more because he wanted to look where his friends were. But yeah, so these guys that do well on the track, like I said, they're warriors. They're designed to fight for their place on that track. So anything that he perceives as pressure or a fight, he's gonna rise to that occasion. And it's not always gonna be a good occasion to rise to, because here he's fighting this. He doesn't understand the question, but he's also not trying to find his way out of it, because for him, it's a fight. He needs to battle through this, and he needs to win it. And he's too big for me to try to force it, so I have to wait till he finds the answer and convince him that it's the right thing. You'll notice I have my left hand on his shoulder. There we go. That was a good give. That way when he does step over into me, because he is doing that, he pushes me away from him.
I really believe that a lot of that has to do with racetrack horses. I mean, they're not pulling their nose one way or the other.
No.
They want them running straight, and when they get in their mouth, they want them still running straight.
Yeah.
They want just enough that they can change from the outside to the inside going this way. They don't want no head bend at all. So being off the track tells us all that. Whose white Dodge is blinking?
And so he's not shown me yet that there's anything bad in him. He's going to survive. And you have to convince him that he doesn't need to survive when we're working with him. And just like, so many of us go into survival mode in the world and we forget to talk to God. If we just give it to God, he'll keep us where we need to be.
Yeah, I would think that this would be a horse that if you put an inexperienced rider on them and they're trying to pull them around, chances are he'd go up, because he don't know to pull around. He knows to go.
Yeah.
And they don't have good brakes either. Just saying.
Generally not. You have to teach them to give to pressure.
Yeah.
And everything we do in I call it civilian life, because we're not on the racetrack. You've got your racetrack world and your civilian world.
Yeah.
They don't understand civilian life. They only know the racetrack. And so, like, I mean, I can put my hand on him right here, and he pushed into me before he chose to go away. Another person, he might have won that battle, and therefore it makes that battle bigger and bolder, because now we learned that that's how he gets out of that pressure. So push his nose over here, go away from me. Maybe move your shoulder away too. Yeah, there you go. And so horses like him, to do it right, to do it well, to have a really awesome, cool horse in a couple years, you have to go slow. Honestly, though, it's worth it, because these guys, once you get them connected with you, they'll give you everything they've got and more every time. But you have to earn it.
I kind of like the idea of what we've been doing with the white horse, where we use the same horse and see a progress. And, if you're good, I'm good with using this one for a few weeks. And because I think he's got a really good mind. He just doesn't have the training that in our world. He has racehorse training, but not riding training, where I want you to move your shoulders, move your head, move your ribs, move your hips. And I will say real quick, Tegan is much better at these thoroughbreds than I am, because I want to get a little more forceful.
You'll have fun with him if you do that. Not really. You guys will have fun watching, because he's the type, he's going to throw that attitude around, and he's going to mean it. And that's not to say that there won't be a time that you'll see me get bigger. There will be. But as long as, at least right now, he doesn't know what I'm asking for, so as long as he gives the effort, I'm just asking him to move his shoulder that way. When I ride, if I pull on my right rein, I want my shoulder to go right. And if he finds his way out on this lunging circle, great. But as long as he moves his shoulder right, that's all I'm asking for.
So many times he's not giving her a yes necessarily. But it's not because he's being disrespectful. It's just he doesn't understand the request. That he doesn't understand. He's not saying no, like we're talking about. A good illustration in the Bible of no is when God told Jonah to go preach to Nineveh. Jonah said a hard no. In fact, he went the opposite direction. If you don't know the story, it would be one that would be really good for you to read. That's the story of when he ran away from God, telling God no, wound up being thrown in the ocean, and a big fish swallowed him and then spitting him up back on the land, and he decided he could be obedient to God. See, saying no to God sometimes has some severe consequences. And we want to keep that in mind as we say no to God, because to know what to do and not do it is the same thing as saying no.
So I'm doing the same thing, just the other direction. I'm asking him to move his shoulder to the left. And, usually you'll see Skipper or I, ask them to go, swing the rope at their shoulder, tap them until they move. I could do that. I'm going to create resistance, and I'm going to create some anger, and then it's going to get to some fear or resentment. I don't want to create that. I want to create a horse that's willing and soft. And that's just the personality of these guys that have battled for their place on the track. That's how they win that battle. So knowing he was a pretty good track horse, and the fact that he is as pushy as he is, tells me that that's a battle I don't really want to get into. Yeah, I'd get him lunging on a circle today. Absolutely. It wouldn't be pretty, and it wouldn't be the type of lunging I want.
One of the problems that a lot of people make is they think they can solve all problems by lunging them. And it's like the only time I ever lunged a horse is if I thought he could buck me off. You try to get some energy out of them. You're not going to get the energy out of a thoroughbred or an Arabian. Ain't going to happen. You're just wasting your time if you think you're going to make them tired. If you think tired is going to make them better, it never does. So it's got to be more about controlling their mind rather than their energy. Now, with that being said, a horse with less energy is, you can teach them a lot of things that they wouldn't accept. I'll use this as an illustration. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's the world that I grew up in. I've had 2-year-old babies there was actually one. There was one of Linda Jones's. The third day I ever got on his back, we worked the river swamp pasture. And that morning, I mean, it was hands-on, just keep from hitting your knees on a tree. And the best way to do that is point his nose at the tree when you go by. If he don't hit it with his nose, he'll move his body away and protect you. But by that afternoon, his tongue was hanging out. I could pop a whip off of him. And it's a tired, how many of you know tired children are more obedient? They don't get in near as much trouble. We're the same way. You know, a tired horse doesn't get in near as much trouble, but it's really pretty difficult to make an Arabian or a thoroughbred tired.
No, generally you physically break them before you make them tired. And trying to burn their energy generally increases their anxiety, which thus makes them that much harder to work with, because now they're just scared. And so over here, I did put a little bit of pressure, and by a little bit, I clucked twice and kind of did this with my rope. And it was subtle, but his head came up, and his ear kind of went, oh my goodness. And so I don't mind that he goes into a place like that, as long as I don't take it too high. But the thing is, I don't want to send him there when I ask a question, because then the next time I ask a question, he may immediately go there. And I want him thinking about me, not about the fear that I'm going to put into him. That will transfer into riding. You know, you ask him to go, and you've made him go on the ground by kicking and whipping on him. Well, now when you ask him to go under saddle, they're envisioning that, and you've got a dangerous horse.
I'm smiling because so many times over the last 18 years, people have brought their horse in and say, he was on his best behavior today. It didn't have anything to do with the energy that Tegan and I brought to him. You know, but I promise you, with different energy, you wouldn't see what you would get if you used too much energy. It'd be a totally different horse if you went at this horse in a different way. But in trying to get him to stay calm and listening.
And you can see here that my personal energy, very, very low right now. But the energy of this rope is raising quite significantly, and he's pretty bothered by that. He needs to learn to be okay with it, but I can handle it one of two ways. I can do it like this and show him that it's not going to hurt him, or I can come at him and go put him into such fear that he doesn't actually learn it, and then he's just crazy. We'll come back over here where you guys can see a bit better. And so I'm being very, very cognizant of how I'm swinging my arm. I'm not just doing anything like that. I'm kind of giving him a heads up. It's coming, so I don't surprise him. Now, you know, in a year of doing this, I'm gonna surprise him, expect him to go, holy cow, what was that? And then not care. I don't expect them to not react to a surprise, but I do expect them to react appropriately. But I have to teach them what appropriate is and give them the tools to be able to accomplish that. So we're just going to play with this till he can be a little bit softer with it. He's already softening. I don't like him turning his head, because there he's blocking me and keeping me from getting over there. He's saying, I don't like what you're doing. I'm going to try to do something to get out of it. Usually if I look away, maybe it goes away.
His form of saying no. I don't like that. That's too much.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. It's just like, you know, when God tells us something and you're like, God, really? That's a lot to ask. I'd rather not. He's going, no, I don't want you over there. When you're over there, it's uncomfortable. And okay, maybe if you're going to make me put you over there, I'm going to move. So this is where if I had started using my rope to send him around a circle, I would have reinforced the fear of the rope, because now the rope moving bites him. Attaboy. And what you guys can't see is he's clenching his jaw here. He's standing, but he's not okay.
he's a guy that got in trouble, he's going to keep his mouth shut and bow up.
I would agree with that one. He just doesn't know why he got in trouble. He's not actually in trouble, but he doesn't know that.
But this was a good thing, and I think it's different with every horse about the green light, yellow light. You know, eventually you got to get into the yellow light to advance them, but it's knowing when and how much. You know, you can't just live to where he doesn't care. But see how she went through the yellow light to now it's green.
Well, and you have to be careful reading green versus shut down. He's kind of on the borderline of going between green and shut down. Here he's kind of waking back up a little as he's noticing some of his surroundings. He's starting to breathe a little bit more. When they're tense, they'll stop breathing as much. So we're getting some deeper breaths, some blinky eyes now.
I started telling you this story this morning, and then squirrel went by or something. I don't know. I forgot to finish the story. But I read about a study of training horses, and they really did this study. They trained for 2 minutes, and then they let him rest for 2 minutes. Train 2 minutes, rest 2 minutes. That's all they did, the whole session. It was 2 and 2. The other one is they trained for 4 minutes and 4 minutes. 4 minutes, 4 minutes. You get it, what I'm saying? Said it was unbelievable the next day how much more the horse on 2 minutes had retained. Unbelievable. You know, I know you've heard me say when I was studying about trick horse training, this woman says, you know, she had horses in to train for trick horse training. And the typical trainer, you know, depending on who you go to, maybe it's them, if it's a big barn, somebody else brushes and saddles. You just get on, ride for so many minutes, maybe an hour, probably not. And somebody else cools them off, unsaddles them, and washes them. But this trick horse trainer said that she realized that she trained for an hour a day, but it was 15 minutes 4 different times. Now, I'm going to give you an illustration of that. When the first time I ever drove a semi, it was funny. It was a cab over international with no air conditioning, no power steering, and we bobtailed to Jacksonville. That is not how you want to learn to change gears in a semi. But you know what? If you get on a main road, you only have to change gears one time and you can go 50 miles. But now if you go downtown Tampa and you have to change gears at every red light, you learn and you stop and you learn and you stop. So stopping and going will help you learn it better. You know, I have problem trying to learn how to do PowerPoint when I only do it once every 2 or 3 weeks. You know, I need to do it over and over, stop and do it to make it an issue. But I like what you're seeing. I like him. I see lack of training in the, I'll just say cowboy world.
Lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge for what we want, but no attitude.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's trying really hard as long as I give him what he's needing. If I come at him big and bad, he's going to meet me, he's going to rise to the occasion, and he's going to fight me. But if I come at him with understanding and saying, hey, I'm going to help you learn how to do this, he's like, oh, are you sure? Oh, okay, that's not too bad.
All right, we're going to take one of them 2-minute breaks. I want to tell you a story about Moses. Now, whether you know much about the Bible or you don't, you're probably going to have heard some of these things. And I'm going to tell you, you could spend hours teaching about Moses. There is so much written about Moses. But I'm going to kind of highlight it to prove the point that I want to prove. But, yeah, Moses is the guy that God sent to Pharaoh to get sent to Egypt to get the Israelites. And he's the one that led them through the desert for 40 years. He's the one that parted the Red Sea. He's the one that threw his staff on the ground and it turned into a snake, and he picked it up by the tail and it turned into a staff. He's the one that God said, because they're out in the desert and they have no water. And there's just so many stories to tell. I'm not even going to do it justice, but it'll get to my point. You know, there was a point where they didn't have anything to drink, because if you ever heard the story, they were eating manna that God provided from the sky. But they needed water. And God told him to take his staff to the rock, strike the rock, and water would flow. And it did. That's going to be important a little bit later. But he's the one that did so many. He's the one that went up on the mountain with God and brought down the 10 Commandments. He's the one that led them through the desert for 40 years. He's the one that wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. But let me tell you the other side of Moses that we may not think of or may not know. And I may not be 100% on it, but I'll be close. He was a Hebrew child in Egypt. And at that time, Pharaoh, which I grew up for years thinking Pharaoh was a name. It's just a title. It's like king or president. There's Pharaoh so-and-so. I don't know which Pharaoh it was, but we're going to say king. The king, they're always scared of getting overthrown, because if your country gets weak, another country is going to come get you. So they're always scared of getting overthrown. So the king made a decree to kill all Hebrew boys. Well, Moses' mother, I don't know if it was from God or what, but she knew that the king's daughter went down to the river every day at a certain time. So she hid behind some reeds and waited for the king's daughter to come, and they put the baby in a basket. And they eased it behind the weeds where the daughter couldn't see him, and they pushed him out in the river. And the baby floated down. And Pharaoh's daughter found this baby. It's like finding a lost puppy on the road. You know you're taking it home. So she takes it home, and all at once she's got the baby. What is she going to do with a baby? But she's going to keep the baby. She loves the baby. And through godly circumstances, they actually got Moses' mother to take the baby home and nurse it for the king's daughter. I don't know exactly what age, but Moses, when he got of age, I don't know what that was, went to the palace. He was raised in the palace. He had the best education, had the best of everything. This is the Moses we just talked about. Well, then he saw an Egyptian beating up another Hebrew, which he's Hebrew. He got mad and killed the Egyptian. As the old story says, all hell broke loose. He fled the country. Moses became a shepherd for 40 years. He left all that he knew. And I'm sure that God used that to go from the palace to being a shepherd. I'm sure humble came at the top of the list. But then God called him, because God had a purpose for him. And God said, I want you to go back to Egypt. Well, how many of you know you don't want to go back to the country that you ran from? And I want to read a few things that Moses said in the conversation that he had with God. Now, to kind of give you the heads up, he understands it's God when God made a burning bush that did not burn up. That was God's way of saying, it's me. You better listen. So let me, this kind of how the conversation went. Now, I'm going to use the word Moses told God no. It's not exactly what he said, but it's what he meant. Moses said, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? What is that saying? Who am I? It means I'm not good enough. No, I don't want to go. No. He said, what if they ask who sent me? What is that saying? I don't have enough information to do the job you've asked me to do. What if they ask me who sent me? It reminds me, it happened here at church. I guess it was one Sunday, maybe after church. It may have been before, I don't know. But a new person came up to ask one of our people a question. And he said, I got a question for you. And they immediately said, come on, we'll go talk to Skipper. He didn't even ask what the question was. The question was, do you have any weekday services? See, he could have answered the question. But we automatically get it in our mind. We say no because we don't think we have the correct answer. He said, what if they ask who sent me? Once again, he's saying, I don't have the answers. I don't want to go. When you say I don't want to, same thing as saying no. In your heart, you're saying, no, I don't want to. He said, what if they ask me who sent me? And God's reply was, I am who I am. And he comes back, what if they don't believe me? See, he's saying no. He's making excuses of why he should not be the one. And God told him, I'll give you signs and wonders. You throw your staff down, turn into a snake. I'm going to use the 10 plagues. This is all from Moses, if you understand the plagues. There's so much to learn about hardening hearts and softening hearts. It's just, man, you just need to read the whole thing about Moses. But he said, but I'm slow of speech and tongue. How many of us said that? I'm not a good speaker. How many of you have said, I can't talk on a microphone? I'm not a good speaker. I can't is the same thing as telling God no. And then finally says, please send someone else. By then God's angry. How many times can a child tell you no before you're angry? And he finally said, I'll get your brother Aaron to help you. You're going to do it. They went through the 40 years in the desert, and they're almost to the promised land. And everything that Moses did, he did for the glory of God. When you part the Red Sea, you want God to get the glory for parting the Red Sea. God spoke to Moses in a way that Moses was being the mediator for God. God said, strike the rock and we'll get water. Struck the rock and got water. But you see, sometimes we hear what we want to hear from God. Sometimes we're in our own little world and we hear what we want to hear. This week, Kathy made a statement. I heard the first 3 words and I took off running. I didn't hear the rest of the sentence. And that can get you in trouble because we go the wrong direction. But there was a point towards the end of the 40 years that God told Moses, go speak to the rock and get water. Moses was mad. And he took the staff and he hit it twice. And he got water. Now, what's the big deal about that? That's the way he did it last time. Last time, God said, strike the rock with the staff and get water. And that's what he did. But this time, God said, speak to the rock. And I'm sure it was speak to it because I told you to speak to it. God is into details. And because he disobeyed God right there, he didn't get to go in the promised land. You see, there's consequences when we tell God no. When we do it different than the way God told us to do it. We've been doing Cowboy-up Ministry for 18 years, and I don't know, about 4 years before that, something like that, I quit my job, and I was going to horse train for God. Isn't that what we do now? But I had it backwards. I was going to horse train for God. And it took me almost 4 years to turn that around and put God before the horses. You see, God's into details. God's into, asking us to do things. And just like no parent wants to be told no, how often are we okay with telling God no? God's looking for yeses, not nos. But it's so easy in this world to say, I'm not good enough. I can't. I is a lack of trust in God. And we all do it. I've done it. I told God no for so many years. It was unbelievable. The first no we tell God is, I'm not going to surrender my life to you. I'm not going to give you my heart. I'm not going to live for you. Now, most people say, I'm not going to ask you into my heart. That's nowhere in the Bible. It's not about God's already came down. It's us giving our life to God, and then He gives His Spirit to us. That's the first thing we got to answer, yes or no. And it's funny how so many times when people say, I'll give you my life, well, at least a part of it. And God will take that, just like a horse trainer would take something, because God's patient. He's got eternity to deal with. But He's always looking for us to say yes. He's looking for us to be His hands and feet and voice. Man, can you imagine what it's like when you tell your parents no? Do you remember that feeling? What's it like when you tell God no? See, there's no immediate consequence, so you just shrug it off without knowing the consequences of the long range of being disobedient to the God of the universe, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We told Him no. I'm reminded of a skit we did one time about somebody that said they were praying. Lord, I just love you so much. God, I'm praying. I'm giving you my heart, mind, and soul. Just please use me for your kingdom. And the phone rings. Hi, Mary. How you doing? Yeah, we're doing good. She said, we're looking for somebody to help with communion. Could you help with that? I'm really busy. It's a really good thing, but I'm really, that's not my thing. Okay. Lord, you know how much I want to serve you, and you know how much I want to be your hands and feet. Lord, speak to me. And the phone rings. Ring. Hi, Mary, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. I said, we've got somebody that needs a meal. Could you fix a meal for them? They've been in the hospital. Oh, I'm just not a very good cook. And that's the way it happens over and over and over. God is speaking through other people to meet the needs of the kingdom, and we're telling them no. So I want you to challenge yourself to pray about it before you say no. Now, because Satan will make you run the wrong roads too. But I'm going to tell you where I'm at. I would rather do something thinking God told me to do it than not do it, and it was God telling me to do it. To know the right thing to do and not do it is telling God no. To know what you should not do and you do it anyhow is telling God no. We got to learn to tell God yes. We got to learn to trust God, because He will take us out of our comfort zone. That's what we're going to do with this horse. We're going to take this horse out of his comfort zone. Because here's what I know. If we can do it in our comfort zone, we don't need God. God wants us to know the power comes from Him. He wants the people to see the power comes from Him. When you speak to the rock, water will flow. As we close today, I just challenge you to pray that God will be obvious to you, the Holy Spirit. You will stop the chatter in the back of your mind so you can hear specifically what God would like for you to do or stop doing. And, I know in a group this size and on Facebook, there's going to be people that's going to say, I never heard from God. I understand that. But if you had to guess what's something God wants you to start doing, what would it be? If you had to guess what's something God would like for you to stop doing, what would it be? If you had to guess in some way you could serve the kingdom. People, here's what I know. I was so blessed in this. From early on, I was part of a movement that was bigger than I was. And that's what people need. They need a purpose in life that has eternal value. Let me tell you, it's right here. Right here is this eternal value. What can we do to invite more people, to touch more people, to be part of people's lives that don't know God? We're starting a whole new series on being better fishermen. Can you tell God, yes, you want to be a better fisherman for the kingdom of God? That's where we're going. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you so much. I thank you that you have given us everything we need to be what you've called us to be. Yeah, you gave us each a different personality and a different temperament and all of that, but you want to use who you created us to be and form that in who you created us to be through your Spirit. Because, Lord, it's only when your Spirit works through us, when we're obedient, when we speak to the rock instead of striking it, when we quit trying to do things on our own, but we look and honor you because we have communication with you. Lord, how do you want it done? Who do you want me to talk to this week? Give me the words and trust that he will. Lord, this week, keep bringing it to our mind to not say no and to say yes. And we thank you in advance. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, thank you. Please sign up with Debbie for this coming Saturday and Healthy Boundary class Wednesday, 7 o'clock.